morning, ladies and gentlemen. First, a big thank to this Deputy Minister. I think this was a very fresh and open and transparent speech for any member of any government in this world. And I think it's very good and transparent, and it's true what was said. I'm from a company called VI2 Partners. We are active in the Ukrainian NPL market for many years. Working on our own books as investors, but also advising both banks when they run into NPLs, but also companies when they run into distressed situation, or investors when they come to this market and dare to invest into NPL. And I want to share our view on the market and some experiences that we have collected over the last years. It's not facts and figures, it's bare impressions. That you might have experienced yourself in a similar way, that you might feel familiar when you see them. And it's a kind also of guideline to whoever wants to invest into this market in Ukraine. First, a macro view. We see clearly, as you realize in the world, that we are coming to an end of or let's say a profound change of globalization trends. We are fading out of the liquidity boom, which also has an implication on non-performing loans. It will make interest rates and yields that you expect in this sector rise. We see a rising US dollar and US interest rates, and we have an emerging market crisis, as many speakers have talked about yesterday, which also has an implication on the NPL sector, because other countries like Turkey and Argentina all of a sudden huge players in this NPL markets, and liquidity from foreign investors who might come into Ukraine are also now looking into other markets. And we have a new nationalism in many markets, which constrains some investors. How about Ukraine? All of you know we have presidential elections in front of the doors. Many international investors look into that. They want to know what's happening, who are the new players. What's happening? Of course, do we have a hot or frozen conflict in this country? We see many improvements, as we have also heard before, in laws and regulations. It's a good start. It's not where it needs to be, but definitely it's a very good start. We see, as we've also seen yesterday in the speech of the National Bank, a normalization in many economic trends in this country. And more important for the investor, there are real opportunities in this country. This is a very interesting country. It's an attractive country. It's a huge country. So there are real opportunities that have to be uncovered. And we are there to help investors to do exactly that. From the investment priority areas, what we see in the UA market. If we look into the NPL industry, we definitely have to say that the Ukrainian market has a high political risk. We still have political interference in many sectors. We are in a high inflation market with high lending rates. And more important, it's a traditional market with equity shortage. There's too little equity in this market. This leads to certain investment criteria. So we have to accept this setting when we enter this market and say in what type of NPLs we normally advise investors to go into. Number one, avoid sectors with high political exposure. Number two, go into export-oriented industries or debtors who are export-oriented because you have currency-linked cash flows. See that you enter industries or debts of companies that promise an exit to international groups, because international groups can bring new equity into the markets. Very important, this is not a market to play for the long term. Why? Because there is a high political risk and you are in a high inflation market, so we should concentrate on a short investment horizon. And this is not the market where you play for 15 or 20% yield. If you can't double your investment, you better quit. I mean, this is a high yield market. If you can't achieve this, you should better not look into an investment. We also have certain industry preferences that are derived from these criteria. Normally, when you enter a new NPL market, like currently Turkey and Argentina are, let's say, fresh NPL market, you would go for bonds of markets leader and government. This is definitely too late in this country, so you have to go for the corporate loans. And the sectors that we treat preferentially are IT, are food agro, are retail, real estate, and logistics. So more or less the industries that are either export-oriented or that have some real assets still that are backing the loans. There's a huge NPL loan book in this market, as I'm sure we will still hear all the data. The good thing is most of these loans are asset-backed. So in case these assets, as we heard before, are still existing, it's very interesting to enter the market. And I think for the courageous player, this is a huge opportunity to enter. The country has to solve this NPL problem. It's a huge burden on the economy, a huge burden on this government and on the future of the country if this NPL problem is not solved. It's like if you have a city where every second house is a construction site which is not finished and under construction and nothing goes on. It's exactly the same with NPL for the economy. As long as this is not solved, it's very difficult for the companies who hold these NPLs to develop, and it's very difficult for your banking sector to give out new loans. So definitely it should be a top priority area for the government. We always tend to compare this NPL market to a Western movie. So you know this guy, it's John Wayne. He's entering the saloon and he has only some seconds time to decide whether he takes the whiskey at the bar or he's shooting 4 gangsters. We have a little more time and we don't shoot the gangsters. But definitely if you enter this game, you should be ready to escalate. This is not the business where you sit on the desk and it's not a pure financial investment. If you're not ready to escalate, specifically in a country, Ukraine, you should not enter the NPL sector. It doesn't make sense at all. There are, I think, better businesses. We have 6 areas in which we look always in this NPL sector when we enter this investments, and I want to share this with you, coming from the last years of work that we have done in this area, and also the specificities in Ukraine. The first is what we always see with investors, or many investors enter the game without thinking from the end. It's wrong. Like in every investment, you should think from the exit. So if you acquire a debt and there's an asset that you can take over, how can you at the very end sell the asset? If you can't sell the asset, it doesn't bring you anything to hold the asset. Be aware that Ukraine is not a market where every assets or all assets are liquid. So this has to be looked into. Of course, as we have heard before, there's huge enforceability challenges for certain assets. This has to be thought through. And in this debt deal, you always have to consider that people are not paying back, so you have to repossess the asset, and it might also need additional investment needs in order to make an asset, again, sellable. So it might not be done with just investing into the NPL. And be ready to operate an asset that you take. If you're not ready to operate, the asset might be unvaluable. Understand the real value and the underlying assets. Very important in this country. Find out not what is on the paper, as we heard before, but find out who is really in charge of the asset. Who has operational control of the asset? These are the people who are controlling the business, not the ones who are the directors on the paper or who is somehow officially in charge. The people who control the asset and have the operational control. Might it be a supermarket or might it be an agricultural site? Whoever controls the asset and gains the cash flows controls the situation. The physical state of the assets might be worse than what you find on paper. Physical assets might not exist. They might exist on other names. Check it out and check the real cash flow potential. Sometimes there's a cash flow that some other people take from your asset and it's not in your books. So important. We always say focus on negotiations first. It's the cheapest way of reaching a goal. It's like John Wayne taking the whiskey and relaxing and not shooting. It's faster and it's cheaper. It's not always possible. I know that and we have seen it. You always have to assume that debtors don't want to pay back. So it's not that you can assume when you enter a negotiation there's someone who wants to pay back and you find a shared solution how this works out. In this market, especially as there was such a big, interaction between politics and banks and businesses, there's a lot of credits that were given out without a clear intention of being paid back ever. And so assume this. Definitely it's a personal business, so you have to prepare the negotiation by building personal pressure on the debtor who's there. Find and use allies and go in and be bold and strong. This is unfortunately a macho market here in Ukraine, in this area. Other 3 key learnings: beware of compliance restrictions. Yeah, we always tell this to international investors who want to enter Ukraine, and we discuss with them how to enter and what to do. Be sure that you have the additional time that you need for your international bodies. Be aware that in this market, not everybody is playing clean. Don't take this as an assumption. And you have to be able to see and to manage legal and accounting gray zones, how we call it. Many debtors play in that regard. Companies play in this field. And if you cannot handle it, you should probably sell this asset or this loan that is in this area fast. This debt business is always a very personal situation. There's egos, entrepreneurs, failed entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. What we have seen, and that's also then a learning for the negotiations, live and let live. It's a very important thing here in order to find a solution. Look for face-saving solutions. All these people that need to pay back money also have to have a face-saving solution afterwards in their life. Very important for our banking friends. Yeah, it's not about moral or justice. Yeah, we have seen many cases with banks and lenders where they say, "Oh, we cannot give this person a discount in his loan because this might, be a moral hazard, and this could inflict, kind of a precedence for other people to ask for huge discounts on their loans." In most of these situations, when you start from this kind of envy or moral or justice point of view, you end up with nothing. This is our experience. Always consider when you have given a loan, you have given the gift to these people. It's not when you give them a discount on the loan. Actually, you ask some money back from them. If the money is the loan is non-performing and it's gone, the money has long been spent and gone, and now you are recovering money. So it's not a gift that you give to someone if you give them a discount on the loan when they want to get out. Actually, you fight for your money. Be unemotional. It's difficult in many situations because we are human beings, but the emotions don't help on. Watch out for the poison pills. Yeah, this is a great market for poison pills, and people are very, very familiar and very professional in putting poison pills into deals. As we had heard before, blurred property rights that change all of a sudden, complex corporate structures via different nationalities, countries, legalities, sidetracks and counterattacks. If you try to repossess something, all of a sudden a law case or legal case is put against you in a completely different matter and in a different court. Outstructuring of critical assets. Yeah, we have seen cases where all of a sudden in an important company, brand rights are being given to another company, and you hold a loan in a company which all of a sudden is worth only half because all the brand rights of the company are gone to a complete different entity who is charging then license fees. All of course with contracts that are dated back, so it's very difficult to fight that in court. And of course abuse of authorities and networks. So now take this aside, and because you might say, wow, this is a difficult market. It is a difficult market, but the good news is that's why you're in here, and that's why you go for the extra yield. If you have the same situation in Germany, probably the yield is only 10% of what you can make here, but it's real work and it's a real challenge. But we have seen for the people who take this challenge, it's a great market, and I'm quite sure the next years will continue to be that. That's it. Thank you very much.